Contact flows are very crucial in any contact center, right? So they are pretty much one of the key backbones of Amazon Connect. And what contact flow actually do is that they defines the customer's journey. When I say the customer's journey, I'm describing the customer experience once they reach out to your contact center. So once they phone in, whether they reach out via SMS, regardless of the channel, whatever experience that they go through is what we define in a contact flow. So in Connect, we have pretty much groupings of contact flow. On a high level, we can have our simple and our straightforward flows, or we can have models. With models, what happens is that it makes the same flow components reusable, and then you're able to import them into our flows without having to build or recreate them anytime you want for whatever use cases we want. So in Connect, flows are pretty much grouped into these kinds. So we have first our inbound flow, which is the main flow, and then we have customer queue flows, we have whisper flows, we have transfers flows, and then we have journey flows. So with the customer queue flows, what they are used for is primarily they define the in-queue experience. So if you call a call center or if you reach out to a call center, the time you spend, right, waiting before you get connected to an actual agent is what we describe as a customer queue flow. So that experience goes into your customer queue flow. So if you reach out to any call center and you get any experience in that regard, this is where you find it. The whisper flows are pretty much more like an alert flows, right? So if you call certain call centers, the moment you answer, you get a message like, oh, your call may be recorded and monitored, blah, blah, blah. Or they might introduce themselves or something automatically. Those things goes into the whisper flow. So anything you see customer whisper, then that means that the customer is hearing agent whisper. The agent hears it. The transfer flows are for, say, you are trying to connect several call centers, several agents, and things like that. So this is pretty much the type of flow. The last one is a journey flow. The journey flow are primarily used as part of campaigns, right? Configuring certain outbound campaigns requires you to set up these journey flows, and then you make use of them. So we are quickly going to create a very simple flow and then understand some of the key stuff. If you are new here, kindly give us a like, drop a comment, and then also do well to share the video. Don't forget also to subscribe to this channel. So now, with our flows, Connect flows are pretty much defined using blocks. When I say blocks, they are just items that you drag and drop. That defines the experience. So the key ones that you need to understand as you build contact centers are set login. So why I always start with a set login is this. Set login allows you to capture logs as part of your contact center journey. Traditionally, having contact centers involve a lot of things, right? Or building your customer experience involves a lot of things. So being able to have logs to allow you to debug is very crucial. So the first one is the set login. And then another one, common block that you see is set recording. And then analytic behavior. One of the superpowers of Connect is its contact lens, ability to record and do a lot of fancy stuff. And then we do that by simply dragging and dropping this block, and then we are able to set it up. If you want conversational analytics, if you want reduction, and a whole lot of stuff, you do that in this block. So on a high level, these are two starter blocks that you need to understand. One relevant block that you have to see for those that mostly build dynamic or multi-language call center is the set voice block. With a set voice block, what happens is that it allows you to define the kind of voice your prompt, especially their text to speech, are read with. If you don't define it, Connect by itself or by default uses something referenced as a voice that's referenced as Joanna. Yeah, I think Connect uses Joanna by default, and then you realize that this voice, all your call centers will be coming in. So if you don't define this thing, everything comes in. One key thing I want to mention is this. You see, with Connect, right, if you don't define any resource and the call center requires it to work, what Connect has is that it has certain default resources that you can always fall back on. So there are supporting flows. For example, if you build a call center and then you don't define your own customer queue flow, Connect under the hood is going to use a default customer queue flow that it has. So all these are default flows. I just want to mention it. Now back to this. Now that we have done with our set voice, there are certain three group of blocks that you need to understand and then know when to use them. First one is get customer input. We have store customer input also. And then we have a play prompt. So these three blocks are blocks that are very crucial. The first one, get play prompts, are just prompts that we use in plain messages to customers. So if you click on this and I put in this message, this is pretty much a direct message that is going to be read to our caller. That's if I'm using text to speech, and then it will come in there. This is being interpreted as a simple text, so Connect will just read it. If I wanted to add SSML to help control the speech and all that, I could have done this and then simply add my various SSML tags, right? But the point of a play prompt is that it pretty much plays the prompt, it plays the message without allowing the customer to perform any action. So things like your announcements, your welcome messages, and all those key things that doesn't require an input from the customer goes in here. You can select your own prompt. That is, if you have an audio prompt, it's a music, anything, you can select them, and then you can make progress with that. Now, the next prompt I'm going to talk about is this one that we reference as a get customer input. Get customer input is similar to the play prompt, but the difference is this: with a get customer input, it allows you to pass your prompt, right, just as the play prompt. But with get customer input, it solicits, or it's kind of requires the customer to make a decision, to make a choice, to select something. So you call a call center for English, press 1, for Spanish, press 2. Or if you want to reach out to educational units, press 1 or something. All those things are being configured in the get customer input. With a get customer input, there are two key things that you can do in here. It's either you do the simple DTMF, where people just go in and they type on their keypads, or you use Lex. I have videos of Lex in them, and I have videos extensively where we build project that covers all these things, so you can check them out on the channel. With Lex is just an, let's say, an AI feature that allows us to use speeches, right, as part of our call centers to solicit the inputs and intent and all that. For those beginners that are trying to understand this is pretty much it. But the configuration to entering the prompt is very similar to what we do in the play prompt. And then the last one in here is going to be the store customer input. You see, play prompt allows us to alert without soliciting the input. Get customer input allows us to get a decision or get a form of options to our customers. But with the store customer input, what it does is this: it allows customers, or it allows us to store the input that the customer enters. So you call a call center and they require you to enter your PIN, your phone number, anything. Those things are being stored in the store customer input block. The configuration is very similar to that of the two ones that we've gone through so far. And then another key block I'm going to talk about is going to be something referenced as a set contact attribute. So with a set contact attribute block, what it does is that it allows us to store key pair values as part of our contact center. Personally, I consider the set contact attribute block to be one of the best blocks in the whole contact center experience. It allows you to build dynamic flows, it allows you to store your values and then reuse them at latter part of your flows. So you can just define them, whether you want them to be a flow attribute or a current attribute and others. When I have it as flow attribute, what it means is that this attribute will be stored in just this flow. It doesn't go anywhere. If I make it current contact, it is tied to the entire journey of the flow. So you have call centers and you kind of chain about 5 or 10 flows. You capture the value and then you're able to use it at a later stage without requiring the user to enter again. How do I use the store customer inputs? For example, I want to have the user define attribute, say a phone number. And then now, if I want, I can specifically set my phone number here as a value. Or if I want, I can dynamically set that number to. So for example, I want to capture the phone number dynamically from the contact flow itself. I can select system, and then I have customer and customer address or number. And what this means is that Connect itself is going to look at the phone number that's called in, and then it will set like a variable or an attribute for it under phone number. And then once I have it this way, I can subsequently use it at latter part of the journey. At latter part of the journey. So what I just entered, right? If I want to play my phone number, there are two ways. I can simply do set dynamically, user defined, and then I'll do my phone number here. What this means is this. What this means is that once it gets to this play prompt, it's going to look for an attribute phone number and then it will play the message. So if I have a lambda function that I'm passing it, I store all these things as an attribute, and then in my lambda code, I'm able to pick those values to make whatever external integrations that I want to work with work. Another key thing I'm going to do is to show AWS lambda function. So this allows us to invoke lambda functions in our contact flow. But before you invoke lambda function, you first have to associate the lambda function with your connect instance. I have videos on that, you can check that out. And then once you select it, you are good to go. Now, the last group of blocks I'm going to talk about is going to be these ones. The transfer to flow, transfer to phone number, transfer to queue. Now, with the transfer to flow, what this does is that it allows us to kind of point to different flows in this contact flow. Transfer to phone numbers allows us to transfer to a particular phone number. Transfer to queue then allows us to transfer to queue. But we use the transfer to queue block after setting working queue. What is a setting working queue block? The setting working queue block is the block that allows you to define what queue the customer is going into. So I have a call center and then I have, say, 3 separate queues. One for finance, one for education, one for IT support, right? Each of them have different group of agents sitting behind them. So what I'll do is that I set my working queue and then I can select whatever queue I want. So once I select the queue, this defines it. But before the call gets to the agents, what we need to do is to transfer it to queue. If you don't transfer it to queue, although you set the queue, but the callers are not going to be routed to an agent. That's something clearly you need to note. So this is the whole contact flows on a high level. Everything else pretty much boils on this. There are certain other blocks that you can take a look at depending on what you are doing. But again, everything is pretty much based on these key ones, and then you're able to configure whatever experience you seek to build. After doing that, you pretty much can bring a disconnect, and then once you configure whatever experience you want to configure, then you do it. You can look on the channel. I have videos where I've configured setting for schools, setting for some AI integrations, and a lot of fun build. The purpose of this video is to understand how these blocks work, and then you can tie them up to build whatever call flow or whatever contact center you seek to build. Just before I end, let me just bring this in. I've seen a flow called set disconnect flow. So for example, you have a call center and then you want to have a survey experience. It goes into your set disconnect flow. I'm going to work on a video that involves connect service. For those who are interested, you can check it out. And then there are some fun stuff, loops and all that. All you do is that, depending on your experience, you just drag and drop your arrows and then you configure it. Thank you so much for watching, and then let's do all to meet in another video.